Hi everyone, I'm Razi, and thank you for joining me today at the Heart Revolution, where we are exploring the ways to keep our heart healthy emotionally and physically, because we know that you just have to have both. So we know, from people who are in wartime or abused children, we know that when they observe directly the trauma or the trauma happens to them directly, of course, we understand that that can affect them throughout their whole lifetime. But what is the generational trauma where someone else's trauma from a previous generation that we did not witness? How does that affect our health?
Okay, good question, Razi. So there's a biological explanation for that, and then I'll go more into field theory, right? Feel and energetics of generational trauma. So imagine that your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, right? And if your grandmother experienced stress, any trauma, stress, whatever, loud noises, anything like that, even war, then what will happen is her adrenal system will kick in and her cortisol levels will go out of balance, and she'll be prone, like, how do I call it, tuned to avoid loud noises or certain areas, right? So genetically, she's becoming modified. This is people know that the environmental impact has on genetics nowadays, and it's called epigenetics. So it's common knowledge, yeah. So now, because of that, all the cortisol rushing and all that, that will also alter the physiology of your mother who's in her womb, right? So now your mother's biochemistry will start changing based on your grandmother's trauma. Now, your mom is born 9 months later, or whatever. Her physiology has now been altered while in the womb, yeah, to respond to certain triggers, or she might be hyper aroused or something like that because she was designed that way in the womb. Now, of course, all her eggs have the same genetic representation of her entire body in a way. Well, of course, with some, I won't get into the whole things about the mitochondria and stuff like that. But when you're born now, right, you will have genetics and physiology that are similar to your mother's and to your father's, of course, right? Now imagine your father's physiology has also been altered when his parents were pregnant or whatever, right? So when you're born, your physiology is affected by the physiology of your parents and so on by the physiology of their parents. So any emotional trauma that your grandparents went through is passed down genetically and physiologically into you. And I've come across an amazing form of therapy called Family Constellations therapy, which I do all the time, and use this when I'm teaching in Italy as well. Um, we use what we call field theory. So we get people to represent family members of the client. And okay, this is stretching it a bit, and it works really well though. Is these representatives basically just tune into the energy or the field of the person they're representing. And believe it or not, it's amazing how close they represent these people. And it's fantastic, right? And through that, we can see, okay, is there an avoidance by one person towards another person? You know, we can see, okay, there seems to be a conflict there or an imbalance. And I'll get more about imbalances in the family system soon. Now, I, as a therapist, will observe the dynamics of the group and understand, okay, there is an imbalance between the mother and the father, or the mother's looking away, or the son is too attached to the mother, yeah, or this happens often when like the father is traveling, right? If the father travels often, the mother then creates a different bond with the child, yeah. versus if the father is always present, then the mother and father, if there's a good relationship, they bond well and the child remains in the child position. All of a sudden, if the mother is alone, because the father is away, the child then and her create a obviously more, I don't know, it's a more frequent bond or a different bond than when both parents are there. And then the child grows up with a sense of attachment or over attachment to the parent and almost a sense of responsibility to take care of the parent's needs. And when that often manifests then in the adult life as relationship issues, anxieties, depressions, and there's ways to heal that. Certain sentences we use and stuff like that.
So let's talk a little bit more about this field. We know from just the research we're doing for this event that your heart, there's a field of energy that your heart exudes, that your heart gives off, that you share and relate to other people in that way. It gives information even to your brain. We can measure brain waves and that field. So what is this field, this kind of generational field that you address in the family constellation? Because really the constellation means where everyone is, right, in this universe of the family, if I understand it correctly.
Mm-hmm. So yes. So family constellations therapy goes by certain premises or rules, let's call them. And what we like to see is that one is that no one is excluded in the family system. So, for example, a lot of people will ignore the child in their family who was aborted or died of a miscarriage. So, meaning a second-born child, a child who was born after a miscarried or an aborted child, is actually the second-born child. And a lot of families identify that second-born child as the firstborn. And I've seen this thousands of times in the clinic, is that second-born child, because they think they're the firstborn, they often have this sense of anxiety or over responsibility, and they don't feel like they're doing enough in life. And when you get them to recognize that, hang on, there's another child that exists before you, and you actually belong in the second-born position, and you connect with your parents as a second-born child, a lot of relaxation happens. It's hard to believe because I'm just describing like that. And anyone listening, please go to a family constellation therapist or see me over Skype or whatever. It's really viscerally, it's tangible. You can feel the changes.
So it sounds like that this birth order has an important role in the family constellation therapy and healing past traumas.
Yes.
Okay.
Birth order, acknowledging missing children, so miscarried or aborted children. The other thing is being in the right position in the family. What does that mean now? So, like I said, if the mother and father are present, the child is in the child position. If the father is absent or the mother is absent and there's an unnatural bond, the child begins to take on responsibility. Let's say the mom's not well. If the mom is sick, for example, and the child feels over concerned, starting from a young age, then the child becomes the caretaker. So we switch positions. And it seems like natural things to do, of course, right? When this happens over a long period of time, the child develops a certain way of being in their own life, an unconscious sense of responsibility to a parent. So they step away from their, what I call it, natural innocence or authenticity that they were as children before the sickness or the trauma of the mother or the father took place. So that by stepping out of the position, their behavior is altered. And unconsciously, that drives a lot of other behaviors that people don't realize is affecting their relationships, their work, their stress levels, their response to stress, their response to triggers in the world. And when you bring that person, remind them, okay, experiment with being a child again and looking your parents as parents and you being in the child role again. They get so much strength back because they remember their authenticity. I'm not saying that taking care of your parents is non-authentic. It's a vibrational authenticity, a vibrational experience that I'm talking about. When you let go of burdens that naturally do not occur to you as a child, that don't belong to you really to take care of, and you can respect your position as child. I'm not saying ignore your parents and let them get sick. It's just being conscious that you are still the child. You regain your strength and you're more available to then relationships and other people in social life.
So are we talking mostly about the nuclear family? When we say generations, we mean like mother, father, or how far back does it go?
Well, in spiritual scriptures, they talk about seven generations, I think, right? Like in the Bible and stuff like that. So I've seen stuff go back as far as great grandparents. Um, Before that, it's hard to get the information because it's not in the person's memory or consciousness, or meaning that information is not available for us to work with. Sometimes, though, for example, traditions, yeah, traditions that come from generations and generations ago, we just naturally assume that they're traditions to follow. At the same time, these traditions were created at that time to serve a certain purpose, and they no longer function for the individual in their modern or present life. Now, a lot of people value tradition, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Tradition has value, right? And even sometimes medicinal or medical value. Yeah, certain things we do, we realize it has health benefits. At the same time, certain traditions are no longer functional, and we have to, how do I say it? Some people behave unconsciously or even consciously following those traditions and realizing, gosh, I'm feeling so stressed. I'm so stressed with my husband, staying with him, and he's still cheating on me, and but I have to stick with him because that's what tradition says. And they're so wired to follow these traditions because their parents taught them that way. It's hard for them to look. For you and I, it's obvious that, oh gosh, leave the guy or like do something about it. For some of for some of these people, it's just like, okay, they really feel stuck and they feel a victim of the circumstance and they feel powerless because their mother believed that you have to stick with the husband. And so some of the work I do is, okay, recognizing that this is a tradition and giving back, you know, to the ancestors and saying, you know what, these traditions are valuable in your time and they're no longer serving me. And with all love and respect, I hand the ones that don't work for me back to where they belong. And I welcome in new awareness and new consciousness into my life. And it's such an empowering statement for people to say, right? Yeah, it sets people free.
It sounds like there's a lot of forgiveness involved.
It's it's funny you say that. It's a beautiful experience doing forgiveness in family constellations because why I say that, when I if I tell you I forgive you, there's still a power imbalance. It's like, okay, you were wrong and I'm right now and I've forgiven you, and you're still the blamed person who's blamed. In family constellations, we have a beautiful sentence, and we say, so the forgiver would say, I am sorry that this happened between you and I.
So you share the burden, or you
It's,
share
yeah,
you share the responsibility.
exactly. And more than that, it's you actually release the person from the blame, right? Because if I'm sorry this happened between you and I, it's the experience. You're saying, okay, this experience happened, and you are the individual who is still respectable, kind of thing. You set them free from being the blamed person.
I'm super happy you brought this up because I feel that when we talk about forgiveness in this kind of modern time, there is this sense of victimhood in it now. A lot of books that are being written now, a lot of talk, on radio shows, talk shows, the internet, things like that. It's about forgiveness being almost this thorn that you carry. Like, I forgive you, but I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want, and I understand that sometimes things happen and you don't have someone in your life anymore. But what I want to ask you as a doctor and a psychotherapist, what is the healing way to forgive? Because I do sense, there's
Mhm.
this almost a sense of entitlement in some like kind of trendy forgiveness, and just this
Yeah,
idea that like, I forgive you and I'm better and now I'm going to go on and live my authentic life. And it just does kind
exactly.
of keep that person always the bad guy.
The bad guy, and also energetically, true forgiveness has not happened.
That is
I think,
exactly what I wanted to hear.
yeah, true. So, A Course in Miracles describes it beautifully. I think they call it the atonement. So, the technique I describe gives the forgiver an experience of letting go. And when you actually let go, physiologically, viscerally, you will feel physical changes in your body, and your mind will be less preoccupied with the event because you've created a more complete resolution. So in psychotherapy, we always look for full resolution, or at least not always, but where it's possible, full resolution creates, how do I say, it completes the cycle of resistance or the conflict. And when you bring something to completion and resolution, then organically you transform into a healthier form because you come out of that state of conflict and friction. Yeah. And saying, I forgive you is a great way to start. And some people feel guilty though. They don't feel, I still feel upset about it sometimes, even though I want to forgive them. And they start ruminating, right? So a sentence like this saying, I'm sorry this happened between you and I. And I say that sometimes to myself. If I'm feeling guilty about something, I'll say it to myself, I'm sorry this happened between you and I. And it creates some sort of resolution, right? Within myself as well for certain things.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So, what are some common patterns that you see? What are some common struggles, illnesses that, I'm sure patterns emerge that this type of trauma affects?
Okay, so I specialize in anxiety and depression. So I'll often see it in anxiety and depression, right? People who are anxious for both unknown reasons, are continuously anxious, depressed, or addicted. Um, I'll do psychotherapy with them often, and sometimes there's no resolution with psychotherapy. Then I'll say, okay, this might be a family system thing. And then I'll do family constellations, and in that is revealed, for example, a miscarried child by the mother, or an unrecognized relative, or a rape or trauma in the family. And when we do some work around that, that goes deeper than psychotherapy somehow. Even though family constellations can be seen as a form of psychotherapy, and if you do psychotherapy, you can do family constellations really well. Um, I find family constellations therapy just takes psychotherapy to the next level.
So, for miscarriage, for example, would that be a trauma that causes the anxiety and or depression, or is the miscarriage itself a result of these traumas?
Both are possible. Yeah. So in some of the literature I've read, and from what we see with patients, but if somebody's mother died during childbirth or something like that, um, now the surviving child biologically might have a rejection of the child because it means death to the parent. Do you know what I mean? So there are spontaneous abortions. I've seen abortions happen where the the partner is still busy with a girlfriend or something like that. It actually happened in my clinic, and the one emotionally still busy. still taking care of the person, so they could not conceive. And when I brought this to my client's awareness and we did some work around it, there was a sense of relief and just like, okay, you know what? He also has to do some work now. And when he was able to let go of that and be more available to her, there was more for trust. And then the body shifts, right? The male and female body shift physiologically when trust is felt. And sometimes we cannot identify, right? It might be normal that, okay, I accept that this person's busy with the ex or needs to resolve some stuff. The conscious acceptance is different from the body or subconscious annoyance at the unavailability of the partner. And that subconscious or unconscious resistance, of course, will affect your physiology and your ability to conceive. And you also asked, is the abortion a trauma? Yes. So I grew up in a society, and many people have, where, okay, they have an abortion or miscarriage and they just say, okay, it happened, and they ignore it. I mean, of course, many people are very devastated by it, and they're not sure how to resolve the event. Now, in my clinic, I'll get the patient to actually hold the child imaginary, like through imagination, acknowledge the child, and say, look, I'm deeply sorry this happened, and I'll always love you, and I have a place in your heart, in my heart, and I recognize you as one of the children in my family. And it's bizarre what happens, like people don't realize, like, let's say a person has had like 2 miscarriages or whatever, or abortions, and they have no living children. When they recognize that they are actually, they have had children, they're just not alive, their awareness of themselves changes. They gain more self-respect because suddenly there is a bit of parenthood in them. Now, a lot of people will resist this suggestion of what I'm talking about, right? Because they might not have experienced a constellation where they go through this experience. I promise you though, Razi, when you go through this experience, you acknowledge, the value of these missing children in your life. Wow. And also what I do is get these people to let go of these children now to the light or whatever spiritual realm that they believe in, and still hold true in their heart that this person exists, this child exists. I just see a lot of self-respect developing, more respect for new relationships, less guilt, less anxiety and depression.
So what about like these diseases, like heart disease, for instance? Sometimes people might say, like, oh, heart disease runs in my family, or cancer runs in my family, or depression runs in my family. Instances like that, are those conditions that family constellation therapy can help with?
I would say yes, for sure. I don't know if it would help in all cases. And I'm not saying if you have heart disease, then the only solution is a family constellation therapy. It definitely helps, because if you look at it, we're seeing that genetics are affected by the environment, right? Through the concept of epigenetics. And so if something is running in the family system, the physiology of your grandparents and all that carries a certain mechanism, a certain trait, and that trait developed based on the environment at that time, right? And we don't know what it was. Was it food? Was it trauma? Was it shock? Whatever it was, So your response to stress is similar to your ancestors. Now, if you can get that and resolve this through a family constellation therapy and through awareness and meditation or whatever therapy you choose, and give back some of this stuff. And it's hard to describe online or an interview how to do this unless you really experience it for yourself. And I'd encourage the listeners, please give it a try, right? And it's doable even online. You will get a physical sensation, like a difference of, like, every time you have a realization of something, an aha moment, your body feels a bit more relaxed or lets go of something. That feeling actually changes your physiology. And I believe that has the potential, of course, to affect then chronic disease.
Well, also, what I'm wondering too is, if you grow up expecting, my father had a heart attack, his father had a heart attack, died of a heart attack, almost that like placebo, nocebo. I'm wondering how much, because from the epigenetic studies, we also know that belief is one of those environmental triggers, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beliefs, thought, everything is the environment for the human being. So for example, if you're fighting with family and you end up eating food at the same time, the fight is connected to the food. Both are environment. So, and it's not uncommon for you to develop a food sensitivity now to that food because the body associates that food with conflict. Um, so, yeah, sorry, I lost you there,
No,
but
no, because what you had me thinking about was I had struggles with infertility for many years. 6 year time, I had five miscarriages, and then when I did conceive, it was naturally. So I did have this belief that like I even had doctors say to me, "You will never have a child." So from the experience of having that trouble, I believed that I couldn't, but since I ended up through naturopathic medicine conceiving naturally, my
yeah,
second child was my second pregnancy was a complete surprise. And I'm wondering if some of that is not just that I had this physical healing, but also I no longer held this belief that I can't get pregnant or I can't keep a baby.
yeah, because beliefs block you, right? Beliefs, you'll see pictures of a dog on a chain just attached to a stick that's loose. He'll still stay in the same position
Oh,
because
yeah,
he's
right.
stuck, right?
And I
Um,
wonder how many people come in to see you before they go through this and they just they have this belief, almost like we talked about traditions, but maybe there's this tradition of illness or tradition of divorce or tradition of bad relationships or tradition of violence. And I wonder how many of these things are passed down that that
oh,
this
you
can
bring up
help.
a view. It's funny. No, because literally, Razi, I've seen that in clinic. Abusive relationships. People are in an abusive relationship and say, "Gosh, my mother was also in an abusive relationship." And what's come up time and time again is that the child feels a bit responsible for the mother's happiness. And believe it or not, there's a subconscious guilt about having a better relationship than your mother. 'Cause you cannot surpass your mother's happiness. Strangely, they go and they end up in a horrible relationship.
Even though that's what every mother wants is for her child to
Or
surpass her happiness.
exactly, right? And so when you get the patient to say, okay, mom, this is your pain, and I'm allowed to flourish in my life and allowed to have a happy relationship. And a lot of listeners might, when you're listening to this, you might say, gosh, this is bringing up some guilt for me, right? So become aware of that. Loyalty issues to your parents. It often happens with some people in wealth. They don't want to be richer than their parents, or they don't they can be, or they're allowed to be, right? So I've seen that a lot with dysfunctional relationships. Being attracted to alcoholic people or abusive people, and so
And it's sort
beliefs.
of, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I want you to finish this because um, sometimes people, it takes away it disempowers you to think like, well, my parents divorced, their parents divorced, so, or like all the different examples we talked about, it takes away your power, which it's kind of a trend right now for people to, like we talked about. It seems like there's kind of this trend in psychotherapy books and stuff to like victim. It's always somebody else's fault. They have a disorder, or they are a narcissist, or they are bad, and you can't. That doesn't really empower you.
No, blaming doesn't empower you. So when you have the tools, when you realize through psychotherapy, through awareness that you have the tools to release generational trauma and generational habits and do what's good for you. Yeah. Look at your values. Look at really what you want. Look at how you're sabotaging yourself based on belief systems. You know, do the work, get psychotherapy done. So, you stop the sabotaging behavior. And people are scared of that because sabotaging behaviors are habits, and people get very comfortable with habits. And it almost feels unnatural to people to let go of sabotaging behaviors or habits because they identify those habits with their personality. It's like, okay, it's not really me to do this new thing. That's a mistake in identity. Yeah. And because we're so attached to the ego of the habit, if somebody is willing to really recognize the habit as a habit and not their personality and say, okay, no, I value happiness, I value health, I'm willing to look at myself differently, I'm willing to believe different things about aging, about heart disease, about diet, like I've come across a lot of families who believe that their traditional food is the healthiest. Generations, it's traditional food, so it must be healthy. It's not true. You know? A lot of people think, for example, I have an Indian background and East Indian background. I think, gosh, East Indian food is definitely healthy because it has all the spices and stuff like that. But, I mean, if you go to India, a lot of people have heart disease and diabetes. My God, there's nothing healthy about traditional food sometimes.
Well, it seems like a lot of what you're talking about is almost a form of detoxification because blame, denial, anger, all these different things are forms of toxins. And I know you're really an expert in this area because you also do a lot of work with our, organs of detoxification like the liver and things like this. Do you see this as just another really important aspect of detoxification?
Yeah. Imagine, absolutely, absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head, Razi, because now imagine your liver, right? It's clogged up. All the channels, everything stops flowing because toxins build up in your body and stop the functioning of organs, right? And that creates disease. Imagine when you're born, you are a resilient human being, a resilient baby, authentic, available to all sorts of emotions and just free flowing. Suddenly, you become compensated because of fear or a traumatic event. That compensation causes a withdrawal. That withdrawal then suppresses expression. Yeah. Now, when we peel away the compensation, yeah, through resolving the fear and the trauma, suddenly you get a breath of life and you can be authentic again. So we've peeled away, we've removed, right, a blockage, something that's suppressing you. So it's like a detoxification. Absolutely. So it's very important to peel away those layers of compensation and get back to that authentic, vibrant, inner child kind of expressive self.
Yeah.
I'm not saying be stupid and just be childlike. Well, childish. There's a difference between childlike and childish. Yeah. So childlike is really healthy and vibrant and stuff, and childish is a bit different.
And
So I'm not saying
open
be open.
children are very open-hearted, right?
Yeah.
Also talking about
Yeah.
the heart. I read something really fascinating. I had grown up Catholic, and there is a there is a quote from the Bible that said like, "Blessed are the pure." Blessed are the pure, basically. And so I grew up thinking that meant, you just walk the straight line and, there's a lot of guilt with, but what I recently found out that the original Aramaic word for the word pure, now I'm forgetting, was pure in spirit, pure in heart, actually was a word that was more like a verb that meant to cleanse,
Hmm.
which is kind
Absolutely.
of, that just changed it, it just was such a neat and enlightening way to look at it because it's just saying that like blessed, which would mean healthy and vibrant and fortunate and healthy, all those things are those who, maybe, we're human, right? But if we constantly try to keep ourselves clean, free from blame, anger, denial, suppression, poor eating, toxins in the environment, water,
Yeah.
all these things that it was a little bit of wisdom. Instead of feeling like kind of choked or controlled by that, it was actually just a nice little nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. No, blessed is bliss, right? Bliss and happiness and health all go together. Because if you have compensation, if you have trauma, and then you develop negative thoughts, of course, that contributes to anxiety and depression. And that's essentially you're out of ease, right? You're diseased. And the moment you resolve trauma, you cleanse or purify through resolution. Authenticity comes back, joy comes back, confidence comes back, and you have a better life then. You can ask more what you want for in life. You feel more love, you get into better relationships, you deserve better.
So let me get a little bit more esoteric for a quick minute. Back to this field, because we know that there's really no absence, right? The universe is full of light, energy. There's really no vacant space from what I think we understand. So if we're, able to heal our present by, healing the past, can we also at the same time be healing the future?
Ooh, beautiful question. 100% yes. 100% yes. Because the work you do now, of course, changes what your future will be. You know, if you heal generational trauma of your parents, which causes you to create sabotaging behaviors in relationships, yeah, you heal that, then likely you will not sabotage your future relationships. And if you feel calmer and confident, more loving and healthier now, yeah, your genes will become healthier. The environment your baby will grow in your womb will be healthier. So you will have a healthier baby. And now imagine you change your belief systems, you get rid of negative and non-functional belief systems, and you and your partner create a home with very positive belief systems. Your child gets those belief systems, develops those belief systems, grows up in that environment, right? So education is very important. Your education more than the child's education, you know? And then that child will become healthier. And imagine now everyone doing this. All our children will have such positive regard for, I don't know, the environment, humanity, respect, you know? Um, because I think we're out of that time frame of having to be very aggressive, right? In those times, in medieval times, of course, aggression maybe was a sense of power or necessary because of the war and the torture and all that. Um, and now, as systems are in place, well, if you watch the news, it's not true at all, right? But there's room for more peaceful behavior, you know? And there is a spiritual awakening in people. People are becoming more kind, believing in kindness, believing in nature, believing in giving. And these beliefs depend on educating people, on education. Yeah. So through cleansing our fears, getting rid of our fears of money, of um, divorces, of betrayal, and all that, feeling secure in ourselves, and then creating children in secure environments, you're affecting generations ahead.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. What has surprised you the most in your work with the constellation therapy and generational healing? Has anything really surprised you?
I think it's the power of knowing what's going on through the field, like the amount of information that comes in into a representative, somebody who is representing, let's say, the client's mother or the father, and the closeness to, how do I say it? The representative actually mimics the real person very well. It's amazing how that information is passed on through the field. If I'm allowed to be esoteric here, but it really works. It's
I just can't believe I haven't tried this yet. I just have to. I have to try
It's,
this.
I feel it's really necessary. I really feel it's very necessary for people to do family constellations because we are carrying so much unconscious burden from previous generations we don't even know. We're carrying belief systems that we think are reality, are normal to believe in. We don't question them. And we live with these traits, and they are affecting the way our body works, the way our mind works, what we give to ourselves, what we believe we deserve, you know? And these are literally, we take them for granted. I mean, in Kenya, we have female genital mutilations as a cultural practice, right? And now everyone's challenging that, right? Because it's deemed as unethical. Imagine 2 generations ago, it was not an issue per se, maybe for some people, right? It was so there's certain things we're doing, um, even in modern society, that maybe 20, 30 years down the road, they'll be like, gosh, what was that about? Yeah. And yeah, how much you give yourself, how much you take from others, how much you respect others, you're basically riding a thought form that was passed on to you by your parents and by society that's based on generational beliefs. And it's time to be open to refreshing beliefs. Society is always changing. We are an organic form. We're morphing all the time, and to new demands, to new expectations.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's listening that feels like they might have some, they might be kind of struggling with some this generational trauma. Maybe they've tried traditional psychotherapy, they've tried exercising and eating right, and there's still patterns emerging that they don't know how to shake. What would you say to them?
I'll say come for a session, Razi, or try out family constellations in your town or neighborhood. I'm happy to see clients online, not a problem. Um, it really works. Be open to the woo experience of it. It seems a bit out there. It's not voodoo. It's not hocus pocus. Bert Hellinger was the creator of family constellations, and I know he's worked with governments and things like that at a government level, using family constellations and systems theory to resolve issues. I mean, I use it in companies. I literally use it in my team building events with companies. And it's fantastic because you get a lot of hidden information or, unacknowledged facts that when no worries, when they're brought into awareness, it really facilitates a lot of change in an organization. So definitely look up family constellations, and I would say don't blame yourself if you cannot get better using just normal medicine or normal psychotherapy. Because I used to see clients a long time for psychotherapy and they wouldn't get better until I did family constellations with them additionally as well. And then full resolution happened. So don't feel that you're useless or you cannot get better or you're not trying hard enough. It's just that maybe you haven't found the right tool. And this is something. And at the same time, I just want you to be aware that also look after your body. Don't think that, this is going to heal everything in you, right? Because what you put into your body, thoughts, generation experiences, as well as present day food, toxicity, the soil, all affects the organism that you are.
Absolutely. Very well said. And what I'm so intrigued by this is that what I really like is there's just no blame. You don't blame yourself and you don't blame others. It empowers everyone. It removes that victim perpetrator dynamic that you know as a psychotherapist more than anyone else. If there's a victim, there's always a perpetrator and vice versa. And just you never can have, like as you say, resolution. You can never have true healing as long as someone is held as the victim, whether it's yourself or someone else.
Nicely said, Razi. That was nice.
So you also, you've written a book and you have some courses. I'd like for you to share about some of the resources that you offer?
The course has been approved in North America thanks to your help as well, for some of the highest categories in continuing medical education. It teaches you how to heal your adrenal glands, your liver, digestive health, leaky gut syndrome, inflammation, as well as resolve trauma. So it's excellent for anxiety and depression, as well as other chronic diseases, because it helps you heal both the mind and the body. Um, yeah, it's available online. I'll give you the website later. It's health.drameet.com. And yeah, I'm hoping to raise enough funds through it to do some mobile clinics once in a while in the bush for poor communities. So that's my dream. I started that project a while ago, and I'm trying to raise more funds to continue it. And yeah, just shoot me an email if you have any questions. There's lots of free videos as well on the website related to the online course. It will change your life. Give it as a gift to other people as well. Um, I've had clients who came to me and says, Amit, I don't need therapy anymore. Your book got me through these months of pain. So it was a very nice compliment. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to share the book and the online course.
Oh, yes. So we've got links here on the Heart Revolution website, how you can learn more about Dr. Ameet Aggarwal and his work. And I love every time we have a chance to sit down. And thank you for sharing all of your knowledge about healing generational traumas.
Thank you, Razi. I feel energetically inspired by your energy. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.